All right, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. Are you ready? Okay. Thank you all for coming this morning. Happy Halloween, everyone. And we're going to kick things off with revolutionizing adult learning, the impact of AR and VR in education. I'd like to introduce Ben Peterson.
Thank you. Thank you. Forgot it was Halloween, or I would have brought a costume or something. It should be really fun tonight in the French Quarter. Let's see if they're going to go. Guess we'll see all the costumes tonight. But thank you guys for attending. My name is Ben Peterson. I'm the Director for Career and Technical Education Solutions at zSpace. Just by show of hands, do we have any current zSpace customers in the room? Awesome. All right, good. So we'll take a little deep dive, introducing you guys kind of our technology, but I am talking, most of what we'll be talking about today is really an overview of what AR, VR does. We'll look at some research and how that impacts learning. and we'll just take a deep dive. I do want this to be a conversation, okay? So if you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to just yell out, raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable doing. And also during the presentation, there'll be a point where you want to experience the technology firsthand. We brought a little demo unit right over here, Vicky, my favorite assistant. He'll be right here to help guide you if you have any questions along the way. But my intent for you today is to really kind of pique your interest. And if you don't already have a vision for how you might implement AR and VR into your programs, I'd love for you to start working on that vision. And we're here to kind of help guide you through that process. Also, we do have a QR code right up top. We're giving away a $100 gift card today at 3 o'clock. If you're interested, you can just scan it, fill it out. There's another one at the end. So if you missed this first one, we'll have that for you at the end of the presentation as well. So let's talk about why we're here. Hopefully you've already started getting some great ideas, some great tools, some great strategies that you're going to be able to take back to your programs. But I want to hear from you. And I come from the K-12 side. And so I really am always intrigued with higher ed, with adult learning, with correctional learning, those facilities where I didn't work. I love to hear the challenges that you might have. So talk to me about some of the challenges you face in your adult education programs. Maybe what's going on that kind of maybe bugs you, or maybe it's one of those things that you know your partners struggle with also. Who's brave enough to maybe say some struggles? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, right. Yeah, learning curves to the technology. Yeah, right. I empathize with that. Yeah, as a former customer of Z-Space and other VR products, I certainly understand that. And what you mentioned was just needing to have somebody there that understands the technology before we share it with others, especially if you have a huge territory that you're trying to get to. I'm sure that is. Yes, sir. Yeah. For our adult learners, yeah, a little, maybe not those digital natives that our young K-12 students are. Although a lot of those adult learners now, I think you're seeing just like me, like, okay, wow, yeah, we were born in 2000, right? Um, so yeah, our adult education is getting younger, younger or something. So it seems. Maybe we're just getting a little older. But what are the problems or have within adult? What about recruitment, retention? I'm from San Antonio, Texas. We have an incredible workforce development, economic development team. There's some incredible grants. But newspapers, boy, they're relentless on this because they know of all the funding that's there. And they're like, you know, in a town or a community that has close to 2 million people, we're bringing in just dozens of people. Some of these programs. You know, what a problem is there? It's 2 million people at your disposal, and you're pulling in dozens. But yeah, that's something I've heard several other customers talk about, and some other things I hear quite often are time constraints. Our adult learners are working during the day, so when can we get them in to go through our programs? Our instructional times are compressed, right? Maybe your organization, your city, your community is trying to put out these programs that are 8, 10, 12 weeks. Historically, these have been, 18 months. Right? Motivation and confidence. Kind of to your point, right? We have our adult learner, right to your point, our adult learner, they don't have that confidence to jump in and start working with technology at their fingertips. So we'll be talking about a little bit of that today. Hopefully those struggles that you have, you find some solution. I wish it was the solution, right? That'd be great. But Well, I'll provide you guys today with something that VR might be able to. So I've been throwing around these terms. I want to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking AR, VR, XR, some really weird acronyms. What about VR? How many of you are familiar with VR? Do we have anybody that have tried virtual reality? Right? Pretty popular. It's been around now for a little while. It comprises of the headset. And if you put that headset on, you understand the power of that virtual reality. It's incredibly immersive, almost to a fault sometimes, right? When we're able to get that immersive. At the same time, we understand that that's some power. Our brain is really processing a lot when we're going through those virtual experiences. How many of you are familiar with AR, augmented reality? Great. The hands seem to go every week when I make presentation. It seems like every week there's more and more people that are becoming more and more familiar with AR. In your pocket, you probably have an AR device, right? Your phones can be augmented reality if you have any of those filters. When I hold my phone up, and if I could make it look like you have, puppy dog ears, or make it look like you're laughing or crying or something like that, that's augmenting. So they're the same type of technology. One is on a monitor, one is through a lens. So virtual reality, the headsets, they have a monitor inside. Augmented reality is going to be through a lens, whether it's through glasses like Apple Air Pro or Apple Vision Pro. I apologize. I just went and tried this out a few weeks ago for the first time. Incredible experience. Really incredible. I could see the real world through those glasses. I could make those glasses more or less opaque by turning a knob. Really fascinating technology. I enjoyed it, but it was heavy. It's out of my eyes about 15 or 20 minutes. And I was a little uncomfortable afterward. Marks beneath my eyes, and could just kind of feel that weight being lifted when I took that off. But incredible technology. And again, our phones, we're using augmented reality all the time on our phone. We're able to hold your phone up maybe in your living room, see what an IKEA couch would look like. All those things right there. Great use of augmented reality. And in the middle, we have something called blended reality. Some people will call it mixed reality. Some people will call it C-space. We take elements of both augmented and virtual reality. What we've essentially done is monitor that's in your headset, we built it into a computer. So it's not going to be quite as immersive. Let's think about the use of it in the classroom. I want to be able to allow the instructor to see and experience what the students are doing. Right? We want to be able to collaborate with multiple students on a computer and allow them to have a shared experience. Really powerful. So we'll be talking about that today. So why would we want to use this? There's a gentleman out of Stanford University who runs their AR VR lab. His name is Dr. Jeremy Balanson. And in his book, Experience on Demand, he has an acronym, DICE. The AR VR that you utilize in your program will allow you to do things that would typically be dangerous. It allow you to show those things that have historically been impossible to show. It allows us to do stuff very efficiently that might otherwise be counterproductive. And over time, it can help with the expense, right? Going through a lot of different simulations, a lot of different lab experiences, obviously those cost money. Over time, that expense can't be incurred through the VR device itself. Sometimes instead of the expensive, I like to change this out with efficient. I'm an old science teacher, and I spent more hours than I care to admit setting up labs. I would stop instruction 15, 20 minutes early so that they can clean up that lab, get it ready for the next room, right? With that virtual lab experience, I can go all the way to the end of my instructional time and typically click a button, reset, clean up everything. I don't have to worry about that. To me, I like the mission. So what about some studies? This study I found a couple of years ago, really impressive. I put my teacher hat on. Now I'm thinking, man, times faster. If I could have almost 3 times the amount of confidence coming out of my students after their experience, and if I'm have students that are 4 times more emotionally connected to their learning, that's something I want. To me, the emotional learning is that emotional experience. What are you going home and thinking about? What are you going home and talking to your family and friends about? You lay your head on your pillow. What you learned about it is uncomfortable to think about it. Connection. But when I read this, the first thing that comes to mind is I have every single one of our students sitting there with headsets. Right? Why aren't we living in a virtual reality world? Sounds a little dystopian, but if these are the results we're getting, why isn't every classroom have a headset on every single student, right? When we want our students to already better, we want more content, we want this emotional connection. I think I know the answer to that. Got a little video that shows you why I think we don't have students wearing virtual reality headsets.
Keep it held down, and then he did.
I show that in jest, but at the same time, if you've had one of those virtual experiences, you understand the power, and I think that jumps straight to that emotional connection of your learning. Most of these people were, I would assume, are probably in the comfort of their living room when they were doing this. And, they've probably walked through that living room with the lights off 100 times, yet you forget that wall's 10 feet away when you have that big linebacker chasing you, right? So to me, that shows the power of learning with virtual reality, but it also shows the issue of why we might not have every student wearing a headset when we're teaching, right? Certainly those of us that come from the K-12 world, I started off as a middle school teacher. There's no way I was going to put that on my 6th and 7th graders, right? I can't imagine the safety issue. We had safety issues as it was, much less covering their eyes. And so anyhow, I show that a little bit as a joke, but at the same time, it does show the power of VR. And I love that. And so what do we do as a solution? And that's where ZSpace comes in. We've built our VR into something that we're all very comfortable with. It's something that's very conducive to your classroom environment, so much so that we've probably had these in the classrooms for the last, 25, 30 years. We've had computers and laptops sitting right there at our disposal. So it's a very safe, conducive measure to what we're doing in the classroom already. The difference with ZSpace is, you'll see up here, we have some additional cameras. Our cameras on top of the monitor are eye tracking cameras. And so as soon as the user sits down in front of the device, it converts to 3D. It finds your eyes and it sends light at different angles to each eye. It's a little strange. That's the very quick explanation of how it's working. And so that depth perception is the first thing that you'll notice as you sit down. The ability to look around. When you sit in front of our device, if you lean your head to the left, lean your head to the right, you duck your head down or stand up a little bit on your tippy toes, you'll see that the environment will adjust to your head movement. So if you're looking at an object and you want to see just a little bit more of the right side, just lean your head. And that object will actually rotate as it knows that you're wanting to look around that object for a little bit. And then my favorite part is the kinetic realism. Not only do I want to look around with it, but I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to look at it maybe at a completely different angle. And instead of a mouse, we use a stylus that looks a little bit like a pencil. And as you point it at the screen, you'll see what appears to be like a laser coming out of the stylus. And you're able to squeeze a button on the stylus and bring things out of the computer and inspect them in 360 degrees, almost like a hologram. So again, we'll go back to that acronym of DICE that we mentioned a while ago. This removes the issue of danger, okay? Because even if we have a carburetor or a transmission sitting right there, we're going to pull it out and inspect it, but this is going to be a completely virtual transmission that we're looking at as we're studying that. So we don't have to worry about anybody getting their fingers chopped off, things pinched, or lost. The impossible, one of the model that you'll see up here is a heart. And you're going to be able to pull that beating human heart out of the computer. And while that heart's beating, you can actually open that heart up and see what's the function of the heart inside. So you're going to be able to look at the ventricle valves and understand, wow, that tricuspid is different from the bicuspid in this manner. You can see those type of things. Counterproductive, you're going to be able to do things very, very quickly here. And then again, the expense, I don't know how much a human heart would cost to purchase, probably on the black market. But we have a human heart for you right here if you're wanting to have your students study anatomy and physiology. We offer a host of applications, so those things that I've mentioned just barely start to touch the ice before it's broken. It's a little difficult to understand and put it into words, so I have a short video here to kind of show you some experiences from ZSpace directly.
Welcome to the real world of virtual reality on the zSpace platform. What is zSpace? It's a tabletop virtual reality that's transforming education today, regardless of whether students are learning at school or remotely. zSpace functions as your typical Windows PC until you open a zSpace application, and then the magic really begins. Long story short, zSpace tracks the user's stylus in real time, allowing the user to comfortably reach in, interact, move around, dissect, blow up, or change different variables within the environment.
zSpace makes learning come alive. There's no way a student will come into a zSpace lab and not be engaged, if not engrossed in the learning, because it is no longer looking at something on a page and hearing someone lecture about it. You are in charge of your own learning. You can go as far and as deep as you'd like in your own exploration.
The feedback that we have gotten so far from both our students and staff has been overwhelmingly positive, and we're now able to give them real life experiences without even taking them outside of the building. And we wanted to make sure that we had things always up to date as possible. This is helping us with that, helping us have our kids see things that they wouldn't be able to see if we didn't have something like this here, because the realism of it is amazing.
The qualitative data from our teachers was very positive. Moving from the science realm where we were using it in anatomy, physiology, biology, and chemistry, we saw some of the products that were coming out from zSpace that were newer in the CTE categories. It's making a huge difference. Kids are learning at a higher level because now they get to see it, manipulate it visually, kinesthetically, auditorily.
It deepens the learning experiences and certainly the learning opportunities. Many times we can't get everything we need in a school system, but this is going to afford the students an opportunity to go through that lab, learn, see, and do. It takes learning to a whole nother level. And so when they enter college, they will have already had a certain amount of exposure and a deeper learning, which is going to have them in a better state of readiness to assimilate in the college environment. It is now time to embrace what is on the horizon at the height of technology, and zSpace has done a great job getting us there.
I hope that video showed you a little better than I could explain to you, kind of what zSpace does and how it works, what it looks like as we're working on that. Hopefully one of the things you noticed also there is the flexibility of our machines. We have folks using this usually down like around second grade is where your motor skills are developed enough to where the entire class could use it. But I mean, we certainly have kindergartners and even some preschoolers that are using our devices, all the way up to medical schools who are using our device. But we're also in corrections. We're also at other workforce development programs for adults. And so there's wide usage when it comes to our customer base. And then the thing I'm most proud of is our software base too. We have tons of applications that can be catered kind of a la carte to whatever you're trying to grow, and those programs that are maybe in your area where maybe you're really struggling to hit the mark on, hey, we need to be getting 20, 30, 40 more students studying manufacturing in our area. Maybe we need to get more people into the health science realm. So it is very, very flexible. Like I said, I've mentioned just a few different use cases here, but feel free to come up and check out any of the others. In addition to our workforce and CTE applications, we also have those STEM applications. So if you are working on HiSET programs, or maybe you're partnering with a K-12 program that's looking to increase maybe their production in biology, chemistry, physics, any of those things, we certainly do that. So from here, we're going to start to take a couple of looks at different uses. The first one we're going to start with is really tying this into our instruction. As a customer, this is how I utilize zSpace. We utilize zSpace within about 6 or 7 different pathways. We started off with health science and agriculture. In our agriculture program, we had both animal science, plant science, and ag mechanics. After that, we expanded into carpentry, HVAC, automotive. I did have a diesel instructor that was really excited to use it. At the end of the year, he said, Ben, I didn't. And so we just transferred those machines over to our HVAC instructor that following year. So again, the flexibility here was key to us, and we were able to move, adapt as our needs changed from year to year. Here's a little model of what we're looking at with the heart. So at this time, if you're interested not everybody, but certainly one at a time. If you're interested, you want to see the product, Nikki's going to be right over here, but I'd love for you to kind of check it out while I finish up the presentation. If you don't get a chance to, we'll be set up downstairs in the expo hall too, if you want to, take a deeper dive into some other applications. But we do have this heart that you're able to pull up and go and inspect down there. Speaking of that heart, we have a link on our website to the research. And guys, this is what gets me excited. This was done just about a year and a half ago by some professors from Virginia, Kentucky, and Texas. And the results came back that they saw a 16% increase in test scores with the students that had utilized Z-Space after or prior to their assessment. And I thought that was just really, really interesting. What she was doing, she was looking at the K-12, and we were looking at 6th graders and 9th graders. They were doing a pre-test. Very little instruction. The students were coming in and reading kind of those traditional methods of how we study the function and structure of the human heart. And then she was giving them an assessment. After that, the next day they came in and they got to spend 20 to 40 minutes on the Z-Space device looking at this heart, and then went right back to that same assessment with the structure and function of the heart. And again, some things that they outlined, for one example right here. I mean, this is how I would probably still draw a heart, right? And just, again, this is a 6th grader. So this is a young student that probably hasn't seen a lot of anatomical models, maybe hasn't gone to the doctor and really studied that heart model that's sitting there on the tabletop. But they drew just the traditional heart. They did understand that there were 4 sections of the heart. You see the stars right up here. They're drawing the valves in some interesting places. Obviously, post-test, the heart was a completely different object, and they start to understand the process and function of the heart along with the structure by moving those valves around. I like to notice kind of where they did that. Same thing with 12th grade. You start to see a really different understanding and perception of the structure of the heart. When it gets to the function of the heart, okay, let's give them a model, but let's understand what's going on the inside. Again, the thought process was completely different when the student utilized Z-Space compared to just reading traditional text. This is on our website, so feel free. I think I had the website listed right there, zspace.com, just /research. And we have about 7 or 8 different research articles that are written. So feel free to do that, but I love seeing that increase in those test scores. What else can be done with Z-Space? How many of you are aware of chicken nugget scientists? Anybody have a friend that's a chicken nugget scientist? I thought that was pretty cool. But one of the things we've seen most quickly approaching within Z-Space is customers using us for career exploration, right? Now, again, I think when I think of career exploration as a former CTE director, I think of what we were doing with our middle school students, preparing them for high school. But more and more, even in our correctional programs, they're using it for career exploration, because as these incarcerated individuals are getting released and getting back into the population, there are a whole bunch of new jobs out there that weren't there maybe before they were incarcerated. Also, how many times do we just find out about new positions, new jobs as educated adults who work in education, right? And who are geared towards job placement and workforce development. And so career exploration has been a really pivotal part of what we're doing at Z-Space, again, for students and adults. So we look at it in 3 different tiers. First is we see it as career awareness, just helping people become aware of careers. So we've built in an AI career coach that will guide the students just conversationally, kind of like ChatGPT, but conversations will stay on task and topic of career development. After career awareness, we start to look at career exploration. Those folks who, okay, I've learned a little bit about maybe manufacturing in my area, but what is it? I want to put my hands on it, right? First thing that comes to mind when we think of manufacturing is safety. Before we put any hands on, we're going to always go through a safety test. But sometimes that right there can be a roadblock. If we can't get the hands-on activities before actually making that selection, we see a lot of people jump out, right? Because they're like, I had to spend so much time. So why not give them the opportunity to explore hands-on, again, without having to be concerned about that realm of safety as we do that. So through career exploration, we take that deeper dive on hands-on content. And then ultimately, kind of like we just showed with the heart there, are we preparing the students for the careers? So again, on one device, the flexibility allows us to not only just become aware, but to start to get our hands on and eventually tying those to those standards that we want those students understanding for certification test, HiSET test, pass rates, and all of that. So we look at this in those 3 tiers, and really we have a lot developed for each one of those tiers. So if you have folks that are coming to you not knowing any of the careers that might be in your community, this is a great resource for them. If they're aware of some of those careers, but they don't really understand exactly what that looks like, here's a great opportunity for us to thrust those students into that realm really quickly and allow them to start to do some hands-on to just kind of assess and test whether or not they have the interest and the capabilities. And then again, ultimately the career preparedness, where we're going to help them better understand whatever they might be studying through the applications here. So with our career awareness, we guide those students through those activities. We look at standards alignment too. So if you do have standards, there's a lot of standards out there based off of what you're aligning your standards to. We have those resources on our website. If we don't have maybe the standards that you're aligning to, let us know, and that's certainly something we can always look into. We try to expand. We have pre-built lesson plans. So if you're like, okay, well, where do we start on our side? We have that ready for you. We're not a curriculum company per se, so we don't have a year's worth of curriculum or 12 months or 6 months or 2 months worth of curriculum, but we do provide thousands of lesson plans to give your instructors the idea of, okay, I see how we can implement it into our existing curriculum. And they are tied to real world professions. In most of our lesson plans, we do have a little snippet in there about career awareness, helping students understand, okay, these are the careers that might be able to access this type of information or do these type of procedures. In our exploration, we really simplify it. We start it with that middle school focus. But again, we have adults that are doing this, and it's doing the same thing. It's providing them a safe place to get their hands on and see some things that might pique their interest to hopefully help them stay in and retain those students, but also deepen their understanding. There's just a little sample of our career coach. One of the things I like most about our career coach is it's tied to your IP address. Most of our applications don't require internet access unless you're updating the applications or installing the applications. Obviously, the career coach, it's an AI form, so it will require internet access, but it tracks your IP address, and it's going to give them results based off your local area. So if you're in Hawaii, you're going to ask it, hey, here are the things I'm interested in. What jobs are there? It's not going to give them jobs that are out on the East Coast. It's going to talk about Hawaii and maybe the rest of some of the Pacific Islands. It will search that IP address. Now, if you want to prompt them, maybe that student's looking to move to another state. All you have to do is change your prompt. I live in Texas now, but if I were moving to Hawaii, I could say, in Hawaii, what jobs are there within this area? And it can guide that instruction that way. But feel free to come by and check that out too. I'd love for you to get some of your thoughts. Make sure that it's still pulling active data to what you're doing at your programs. And then again, our career preparation. So we've aligned officially with a couple of certifying entities, one being UScience and the other being NOCTI. And what we've done with these is we've created blueprints that allow you to see each standard and then understand which standards we are able to help you with. I tell people all the time, this is not a tool to take that lab experience away from the students. Primarily, it's there to guide them and to build that confidence up prior to going into that lab experience. But as you see here, for the engine repair, there are 6 standards within this NOCTI Automotive Technician Advanced Certification. Of those 6, zSpace has 4 applications that will help guide the students through that. 2 of them, those students are still going to have to go out into the auto shop and probably do that. Some, like this one here, when it's coming straight out the blue line, that means that all 4 of these are covered with this particular application. So if you have questions about that, if you'd want to see any alignment with other certifications, just let us know. NOCTI was not a big thing in Texas until just recently. And so when I saw this as a customer, I pulled up the ASE certification, which is what our automotive students were earning, compared that to the NOCTI exam. 95 to 99% overlap. So if you're not familiar with NOCTI, their certifications are very similar to those other certifications that are out there. We'd be happy to take a look at that with you. We're quickly approaching 4,000 schools, universities, workforce development programs as customers. I'm hoping we'll hit that 400th before the end of the year. I don't know. We looked at it the other day, and it's going to be close. But I'd be happy to give you references. If you see people maybe in your area, swing by, and I'll look it up and see who it might be in your area that's using zSpace. Those of you from Montana, Wyoming, anybody there? I'd love to put an extra dot or two on the map there in those beautiful states. And with that, I wanted to give you time to ask a couple of questions. Happy to answer them. If you don't want to ask here in public, we'll be here or we'll be down in the expo hall to answer any questions you have along the way. Do you have a question, sir? Great. Great question. Are you able to record? The answer is absolutely yes. We have a simple application that you just open up and press a button and it will record your screen. Some of our applications have assessments built into them. Most of them are our skilled trades applications. Automotive, for example, if you're going to disassemble a transmission, you can practice that where it's going to give you hints. Then you can start to become a little more independent and you can say, hey, you know what? I want to go to a phase where I'm going to practice this, but don't show me the hints until I ask. And then in the assessment phase, it blocks the hints, so you can't ask for the hints, and it will record you. It'll record the time it took. It'll record which tools you selected, and it'll essentially grade you. So you'll have check marks if you passed. If you missed that particular part of the disassembly, then it'll click on there that you chose the wrong bolt at the wrong time and give that as. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, this is our demo, and I always start people off there because it requires the least amount of training. There is a learning curve to this, kind of to your point, okay? Generally, after about 10 or 15 minutes, people will understand the dexterity and the motor skill that's required. Some people get it instantly. Several of you stopped by the booth yesterday, and I think everybody that stopped by the booth yesterday, y'all had eaten something weird because everybody was doing a great job. We didn't really have to coach anybody through how you utilize that. But sometimes you'll see that, whether it's kids or adults, right? Sometimes kids get a little dizzy, disoriented with that 3D. You can toggle the 3D off as well. The only time I really use that as a customer is if we were putting more than maybe 2 students at a computer. Sometimes we would have 3 or 4 students. So we would turn that 3D off just so that there wasn't that blur for the students that might not be getting that 3D, or maybe the students who are a little uncomfortable with that. But yes, certainly more depth and complexity to those applications that are there. And going back to your recording method, we became customers very beginning of 2020, okay? And so when we shut down in March of 2020 and we all had to become online instructors, having never even considered what that would look like, the folks who were already using zSpace, they were just recording their lessons and then uploading it as an MP4 into our LMS. And so those teachers in ag and health science at that time, they went super smooth into directly just recording their lessons on zSpace, putting that video onto their LMS, and students were able to get basically a direct teach with some incredible exposure. We enjoyed it so much that when we came back, a year and a half later, those teachers were still recording for test prep, because what we found is students are much more apt to watch a 10 or 15-minute video than they are to go back and read in chapter 7, right? Or even reviewing their notes. And so our teachers found that, hey, it's great. The teachers were enjoying being able to show things they've never showed before, and the students were enjoying the process of even just watching. I will tell you that the only wrong implementation you can have with zSpace is if you don't put it in the hands of the learners. But when you're virtual, that's a little tough to do. So you can record those experiences for your students. Thank you for the questions. Other question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi there. I'm in the area of urban studies and planning and so on, and I could easily imagine like a lot of interesting applications that where you use this and combine this with real spatial data or 3-dimensional data around, say, architecture, planning, and so on. To what extent have you gone into these areas and integrating your software also with real data, census data, and things like that? So for simulations and planning purposes.
I love that. We don't have a direct application for urban development. What you can do, though, especially on the architecture side of things, you can import models in as well. So if you have an STL file, an OBJ file, those files are very comfortable, or they're kind of your default files in the CAD systems that are out there. You can import those models into our device and actually get that true 3D ability. We also, for data, for those of you that dig into the data, we have an incredible immersion analytics. And so what it does is it allows you to drop in a CSV file, or you can even do some Python programming to create these 3D analytics. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I'm very used to checking data on a spreadsheet, right? Spending hours looking at these spreadsheets, trying to look at each cell and really understand what's going on. When you process that into a 3D graph that you can actually go in and grab and pull out, the immediate difference is you see the outliers within half a second. Okay, you're not having to hunt into each domain and each cell and really dig down. Those outliers are very, very obvious. So if you're doing any data, I love that. I've done it several times. I wish I still had my student data that I had when I was an administrator so that I could compare test scores with different teachers or different instructors. I would love to see that data in 3D. So we have some stuff like that. Feel free to stop by, take a look. We have some models that might be of a little bit of interest to you, but if you're doing deep work, it would probably require the importing of some models for you. But I'd love to see that. We have a lot of CAD instructors who say, hey, we've got a Caterpillar plant just outside of town, and here they manufacture a really weird piece for, these skid steers. And we're really trying to hone in on that. So that's not a model we're going to have, but let's import your CAD models into 3D and see what that looks like. And so it's really cool. Great question, though. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A large, like such a tabletop model, so an instructor in front of the class had the class gather around while he shows an engine and takes the engine apart and shows the components. Is there a model like that?
We don't have a big monitor like that, and it's really due to processing power. But you can project whatever you're doing on the screen. So if you have an HDMI and you have a projector, or if you have even like a smart board or a TV on your wall, you can plug that in via HDMI and share that experience in one of two ways. Actually, you can share your screen directly, so the students are kind of seeing what you're seeing on the screen. It's not going to come flying out across the room, right? Because that would require a 3D monitor. But they're still able to share in that to the whole group. I think of that oftentimes with our welding application. I took welding in high school, and I never once saw what my instructor was trying to demonstrate for us, right? Number one, I was a tall guy, so I was in the back of the group. Number two, it was always a little thing this big, and he'd say, watch this, and we're going to do this right here. I never once saw it. And then he'd say, all right, put your hoods on. And then I certainly didn't see it because it was, pitch black dark. And so being able to project that, I think I might have been a professional welder right now if I'd seen what my teacher was doing for those 2 years. But yeah, so you can do that in lieu of a larger device. Your second question?
I think it's better model is you're able to communicate with the same. Well, that's because it's the work here, and with phone work, what you're building. Is there a way to communicate with the computer as you're building?
Not real time like that. The only experience where I do see something more like that is for programs that are doing video game design, where you're actually creating and rendering on the same 3D device. Typically, what we would do in our video design programs is we'd build on our computers and then we'd export to a headset. You'd go and you'd make notes. Whoever was in the headset, because they couldn't write, would be kind of saying to their partner, okay, let's go in and make this edit. We need to do this, 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 and this. They would take that off. They'd go back to the computer and make those edits. Whereas on this, since it is a 3D device, the students are able to create and render on that same device. And it really has saved a lot of time for those students using that. But being able to speak to another computer, I can't think of an experience that would be similar.
So that students could be in the same space at one time. That is one thing. The other piece of where I would mention is communication back to the student. So for instance, in automotive, we have one where you're taking apart an engine. And so it lets you scaffold from an example of you open it and everything is blinky. I call it my forced baby bird feeder mode, where it tells you what tool to pick up, tells you the instructions, tells you where to put the tool, right? Goes on to the next step. Then you can scaffold that to the next, because again, as soon as you walk away, right? I don't know if you've ever had that, like, miss, wait, right? They can't move on. So in this next scaffolding mode, right, if you take it out of baby bird feeder mode, which tells them exactly step by step, then there are 40 steps, for instance, in taking apart an engine. So when I get into my next mode, more of my learning mode, I have a tips button. So it will tell me the instructions, right? And I have to then go ahead and do that. There's no blinkies. But if I need help, I'm on step 36, instructor's not around, then we click a button. Finally, then we have more of an exam mode where it is more independent on their own. And I go back to some of your more of my age, where I go back to Daisy Duke, being the Dukes of Hazzard. They used to blindfold her and do things like that. Well, it does kind of some of that. You're more timed. You don't have the support. At the end of each one of those, whatever mode you're in, it does have a capability to report out what that user, how far that user got. So almost like a report. Because as an automotive instructor, for instance, I might not have enough engines, so I might have a group working over here, and then I'm working practical where the safety more issues are, because this is removing the danger. So then I can go, well, Bobby, what did you get done today while we were over here doing more of a practical and you were working here virtually? What did you do? So there is accountability on those for a lot of our applications. The other piece I would also mention is what Ben has talked to you about is most of our canned products. Those little icons in the flyers are canned software. But in the University of Hawaii Medical School, for example, and you alluded to this, where we can open the keys to the kingdom because it is a Unity-based program. And so by doing that, coders can adjust what that open source looks like to be able to do different things. So at the University of Hawaii, they took a cadaver, they LiDAR scanned each cadaver part, right? Because cadavers are super expensive. And at the end of each cadaver bed, there is a Z space for them to literally go through in very real time what those parts are, exactly the measurements that they need before they cut the cadaver, right? So therefore, each student has a real experience to really do this before they lay in with their scalpel. So that took a little bit of extra coding, but when we really say kindergarten through industry, the deployment and integration is different for all, but there is something for everyone. It's just a different conversation. And that's what we're really good at helping with. If you have no idea, we have the teams to be able to support and help with those conversations as well.
And with the conversations, we don't have the support staff to build customized applications. But if you have an application class, if you have 3D design class at your local university or community college, check out those. They're looking for basically internships. We had a school in Kentucky who got an NSF grant. They used a ton of that NSF funding to pay these students to build applications for a very specific automotive manufacturing plant in Kentucky. After 2 years, they're going to be able to sell that application. So we're excited about that, also hopefully helping out other customers. There's one question that's always asked, and this is probably the first question answer period I've ever opened up. Nobody asked this particular question. What's that question that's burning on everybody's mind right now? Cost. There we go. I was like, man, these people must really have money. Nobody's asking how much it costs, right? I'm always ready for this question, so I actually have our website pulled up. On our website, if you look at the top up there on purchase, we help customers find funding. It's an investment, right? So you're buying hardware. That initial purchase is always a little steep because you're having to buy the hardware. You do have to purchase these computers. They run just a little under $4,000. It's a Windows device, guy. That's my work computer. I didn't know if that was mine or Nikki. That's my work computer right there. So I can do everything that I would do on a typical computer on that computer when I open up the zSpace applications where that magic comes in. But we have resources there. Once you click on there, we have boilerplate templates. So if you're writing a grant for our device, you can copy and paste this, drop it right into your grant. I can't tell you how many times that's been successful for our grant writers. We also have a lot of different funding sources listed down below that you might receive. Certainly, WIOA funding, a lot of different local grants, Perkins grants, all sorts of stuff that can be utilized. But feel free to come by. Part of what Nikki and I do with our team is we help write grants. We write grant amendments with customers all the time. We can do anything to help you guys out in that fashion. So we do know that this is an investment, and sometimes it's difficult to secure that funding. So we really try to help our customers secure that funding And we're happy to dive in as much as possible. We also kind of not in every state, but I'd say in every region, we have partners that are like outside grant writers too. So if you don't know grant writers, I can introduce you to folks whose job it is to write grants. And so oftentimes what they'll do is they'll write their salary into that grant. So it's really no money out of your pocket. It would come through that grant. And so there's some great companies that help schools and different organizations do that all the time. So with that, we're about at the end of our time. We are going to have these devices down in the expo hall. We're kind of in the back left corner. If you're interested in swinging by, we'd love to meet you. And we'll hang around for a few minutes if anybody wants to check out the heart or ask any other questions. But thank you guys so much for attending. I hope you'll have a great conference.